יעלות שדי, בכל שבו יעלות שדי. אז ירננו כל עצי יער, אז ירננו כל עצי יער, אז ירננו כל עצי יער, אז ירננו כל עצי יער. יעלות שדי, בכל שבו יעלות שדי. יעלות שדי, בכל שבו יעלות שדי. אז ירננו כל עצי יער, אז ירננו כל עצי יער, אז ירננו כל עצי יער, אז ירננו כל עצי יער. יעלות שדי, בכל שבו יעלות שדי. יעלות שדי, בכל שבו יעלות שדי.
Shabbat Shalom, and a very warm welcome to all of you for joining us for our musical Friday night service. A special musical Friday night service, but also a special contemplative service to use this opportunity of the 25th anniversary to remember the victims of the genocide in Srebrenica. And you'll hear more about that in our special sermon later during the service. But for now, can I invite you all to join me in lighting the candles? If you have some at home, do feel free to light them at the same time, and then just enjoy the music. And we say together, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
And as some of you at home and some of you from places other than MPLS and don't know our community quite so well are wondering, why is the Jewish community like this commemorating this anniversary of the genocide in Srebrenica? Perhaps this song reminds us that it is good, it is sweet to be together as one humanity, remembering and celebrating life together, and also remembering tragedies that unite us as well.
How sweet it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. Hinei matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad.
Let us welcome in the Sabbath angels.
Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Malachei Elyon, Mihi Melech Malolim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem leshalom, Boachem leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Malachei Elyon, Mihi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu Shalom, Baruch Hu Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Malachei Elyon, Mihi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeitzechem leshalom, Tzeitzechem leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Malachei Elyon, Mihi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. La 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 לקראת כלה, la 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 בני שבת, בני שבת נקווה, la 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 לחדודי, la 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 לקראת כלה, la 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 בני שבת, בני שבת נקווה. La 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 לקראת כלה, la 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 בני שבת, בני שבת נקווה. בואי בשלום, עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה צהלה, תוכן מונה, עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לי לי לי, יאללה לה 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 לחלודי, יאללה לה 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 לקראת כלה, שבת, בני שבת נקווה, la 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 לחדודי, la 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 לקראת כלה, la 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 בני שבת, בני שבת
Adonai, Hamevorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamevorach Leolam Vaed. We praise you, eternal one, our God, sovereign of the universe, whose word brings on the evening, whose wisdom opens heaven's gates, whose understanding changes times and seasons, and whose will sets the stars in their courses in the sky. You make day and night, rolling light away from darkness, and darkness from light. You make day pass and bring on the night, and separate day from night. You rule the hosts of heaven. We praise you, O God, whose word makes evening fall.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, ukimu mishpatim, otanu limadeta, otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shalchenu, kumeinu nasiach b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei toratecha, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. יהי חיינו לאורך ימינו, ולכם ליומן ולילה, ליומן ולילה. באחוותך אל תעשו, ממנו לעולמים. אותם נוכל אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. אוהב עמו ישראל.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai, Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod, Shem Kavod.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאורות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
אני אדוני, אני אדוני, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אני אדוני, אני אדוני, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני, אני אדוני, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אני אדוני, אני אדוני, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני, אני אדוני, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אני אדוני, אני אדוני, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נגע בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה תהילות עושה פלא, עוזי וזמרתיה ויהי לי לישועה. 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 אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
השקיפנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים. Spread the shelter of your Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, v'hamidenu malkeinu lechayim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, v'hamidenu malkeinu lechayim.
Baruch atah Adonai, הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל יושבי תבל.
Na 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 ya na 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 ya na 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 ya na 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 Adonai, Sefatai Tita, Ufi Yahagid, Tekilatecha. Adonai, Sefatai Tita, Ufi Yahagid, Tekilatecha.
Fear lurks in the dark corners of my heart, waiting to convince me that love will fail. Sorrow lurks in the dark corners of my soul, waiting to convince me that faith will fail. Doubt lurks in the dark corners of my mind, waiting to convince me that wisdom will fail. Rock of Jacob, teach me to shine the light of mitzvot into the dark corners of my mind, so that I face my fears with courage, redeeming them with awe and wonder. Song of Miriam, teach me to shine the light of tefillot into the darkness of the corners of my soul, so that I may face the sorrows with strength, redeeming them with righteousness. God of old, teach me to shine the light of Torah into the dark corners of my mind, so that I face my doubts with honor, redeeming them with holiness.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech Adon, B'chol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech Adon, B'chol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Baruch atah Adonai, osei hashalom. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Yiyu l'ratzon, imrei fi, v'hegyon libi lefanecha. Yiyu l'ratzon, imrei fi, v'hegyon libi lefanecha. Adonai tzori, Adonai tzori, Adonai tzori v'yoali. Adonai tzori, Adonai tzori, Adonai tzori v'yoali. Yiyu l'ratzon, imrei fi, v'egyon libi lefanecha. Yiyu l'ratzon, imrei fi, v'egyon libi lefanecha. Adonai tzori, Adonai tzori, Adonai tzori v'yoali. Adonai tzori, Adonai tzori, Adonai tzori v'yoali. Yiyu l'ratzon, imrei fi, v'egyon libi lefanecha. Yiyu l'ratzon, imrei fi, v'egyon libi lefanecha.
עשה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל בני אדם. May the Most High Source of perfect peace grant peace to us, to all Israel, and to all the world.
עלינו לשבח
משבח
לאדון
לאדון
הכל,
הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, אשר שם חלקנו לייחד את שמו, וגורלנו להמליך מלכותו. On this day, let us dedicate ourselves anew to the task that our ancestors tried in all their higher moments to fulfill, to bring nearer a time when all your children will understand that they are brothers and sisters, so that one in spirit and fellowship, they may be forever united before you. Then shall your sovereignty be established on earth, and the word of your prophet shall be fulfilled.
Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed.
It is our privilege this evening to have a special sermon dedicated to the memory of the genocide in Srebrenica.
As you've been contemplating coming out of lockdown, over the past week or so, maybe by going to the pub, having a haircut, or even watching a film at the cinema, you might like to spare a thought for the 8,372 men and boys who were murdered 25 years ago in Srebrenica, not by a medical virus, but by the virus of hatred, persecution, and radicalization. These men and boys were murdered by Serbian forces who killed them because they were Bosnian Muslims. Their lockdown had been 3 years of sheltering in the town of Srebrenica, many of them having fled their homes in surrounding towns and villages, seeking protection from the United Nations to prevent them from being ethnically cleansed. When the UN left Srebrenica, the Serbian forces moved in. Women and girls were taken by bus out of the area and allowed to go to safe territory. Many of the men and boys tried to escape, but 8,372 were caught and murdered in cold blood, an event that is often described as the worst atrocity on European soil since the Second World War. This horrific event was sadly only one of many atrocities committed during the Bosnian War. This war brought concentration camps once again to European soil, the use of rape and gender-based violence as a weapon of war, the coining of the term ethnic cleansing, and murders, massacres, and destruction of property perpetrated on civilians purely because of their ethnic identity. Tomorrow, Saturday, 11th of July, marks the official commemoration of the Srebrenica genocide and is a time to remember the 8,372 men and boys murdered, and to think about their sisters, daughters, wives, and mothers who still mourn for them. It is also a day to remember the victims of the other horrific atrocities that took place during this war, a war that was so close to us geographically. I'm sure many of us have been on holiday to Bosnia's neighbouring country, Croatia. So close to us historically, just 25 years ago, and chillingly, so close to us as Jews in terms of shared collective experience. But tomorrow is also a day for making a commitment. Every year, the organisation Remembering Srebrenica provides a theme for the commemoration of the genocide and all those murdered. In previous years, we have been challenged to carry out acts of courage and to bridge the divide. This year's theme is Every Action Matters. To me, this is not so much a challenge to rise to, but a statement of fact, a reminder of something that deep down we already know. During the past few months, we have had it drummed into us that every action that each of us takes will have an impact on either stopping or perpetuating the spread of coronavirus. But when it comes to the virus of persecution, hatred, intolerance, and discrimination, the challenge is perhaps not so much about accepting that every action matters, but is about identifying what that action could be. How can we as individuals take an action that will make any difference against such huge forces of evil, particularly when these forces are militarily armed? Well, amazingly, there is an example of a community in Bosnia where everyone did take action and did resist the forces of evil that engulfed the rest of their country. The city of Tuzla sits in the northeast of Bosnia. In 1991, it had a population of just over 130,000, which is about the size Watford is now. And its population was multi-ethnic. Just over half were Muslim, and nearly 20% were Serbian and nearly 20% Croat, with most of the remainder being the offspring of mixed marriages and describing themselves as Yugoslavian. Throughout the war, no ethnic cleansing took place in Tuzla. The city authorities, led by Mayor Bezlacic, who was later nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, were united in their vision of maintaining Tuzla as a multi-ethnic city where everyone was safe, regardless of their ethnicity. This wasn't just an aspiration. This vision drove every decision they made, everything they said, and every action they took. Tuzla had a long and fierce sense of social identity, of being a united multi-ethnic community that proudly celebrated its diversity. And during the war, with ethnic hatred rising all around them, the authorities were careful that no language was used that could fuel nationalism or ethnic hatred within Tuzla. Being close to the front line, the city came under frequent attack from Serbian forces. But Serb civilians living in Tuzla continued living as equals amongst their friends and neighbours. Every public institution was required to maintain an multi-ethnic workforce. The police even increased their ethnic diversity during the war and continued to maintain the rule of law throughout the city, dealing with crime as criminal activities, not ethnically driven acts. Every business, every factory, every organisation not only had a multi-ethnic workforce, but made sure their goods and services were available and accessible to people of all ethnicities. And the people of Tuzla celebrated each other's religious events. They learnt the dates and times of day for each other's celebrations and the correct language to greet each other. And they not only came together to eat each other's food on these special occasions, but they actually learnt how to cook the relevant food for each other's festivals or events, often preparing the food together. All sports clubs, professional bodies, educational establishments and community groups were multi-ethnic. Other than for religious activities, no single ethnicity groups were allowed. And people lived amongst each other. They didn't live in segregated areas according to their ethnic identity. Neighbours of different ethnicities saw each other going about their daily lives. And when events did happen that could have triggered an ethnically driven response, the city responded together to make sure this didn't happen. Early on in the war, one of the Orthodox churches in Tuzla was badly damaged by a shell fired by Serbian forces. And the mayor immediately called on all of the workers who were involved in doing repairs across the city to come and help repair the church. He said, "This church belongs to all of the citizens of Tuzla, and we cannot allow anyone from outside to destroy it." In other words, this wasn't something that just affected part of Tuzlan society. If it affected some people from the city, it affected everyone. And the workers of all ethnicities met the mayor's request and repaired the church, even working through the night under spotlights, hence potentially putting themselves in further danger by drawing more attention from the Serbian forces. And during the war, Tuzla, because it was known to be safe from ethnic cleansing, received large numbers of displaced people, mostly Muslims, who had suffered at the hands of Serbian forces. And so understandably, there was some strong anti-Serb sentiment amongst them. And the authorities and the people of Tuzla made it clear that the displaced people were welcome and that they received support from Tuzlans of all ethnicities, given roofs over their heads and food to eat. But radicalization, divisive language, and acts of revenge were not tolerated. If the displaced people stayed, they bought into the multi-ethnic identity of the city, and most accepted and stayed, but some couldn't and left. And a very sad day for Tuzlans was the 25th of May, 1995, when 71 young people were killed and 240 others injured by the shelling in the city centre, at a spot where typically children and young teenagers would gather. The young people were from all ethnicities, and very quickly the mayor, the parents of those killed, and religious leaders decided that the young people would all be buried together, regardless of religious or ethnic background. They had lived together, played together, died together, and would be buried together. The funeral was led jointly by leaders from all three religions, Muslims, Catholics, and Orthodox Christians, and was not well publicised to avoid attracting the attention of the Serb forces. So even though it was held at 4 a.m. in the morning, several thousand Tuzlans turned out to attend the ceremony. I'd like now to share with you the words of a second-generation Bosnian survivor whose family suffered terribly during the war, but who also shares actions that individuals took that saved her father and her grandfather's life.
My name is Amna Mujkanovic and I am a Scottish Bosnian. I come from generations of family members that have survived war, execution, concentration camps, refugee camps, deportation and multiple other forms of terrors and horrors. My great-grandfather is a survivor of Auschwitz. My great-grandparents, grandparents and parents are all survivors of concentration camps from the recent wars in the 90s in Bosnia. My mother was imprisoned in Ternopil concentration camp, which was once her primary school and town hall. She was held at gunpoint by her best friend before she was forced onto castle trains to be deported into unknown territory. My father survived 3 separate concentration camps. He survived Manica, Karaterm and the most notorious of all, which was Omarska. And those that saved him were in fact journalists who were there as part of a staged propaganda visit done by Radovan Karadzic, one of the Serbian war leaders at the time. My grandfather was ultimately saved by a Serbian soldier who knew him, who stopped him from going on a bus, which then would mean that all those on it were executed on multiple cliff points and execution points in the surrounding areas.
As we say Kaddish in a moment, I'd like to invite you to think about the 8,372 men and boys murdered at Srebrenica, and all those that suffered during the Bosnian War, and all those that are suffering persecution today because of an aspect of their identity. And whilst you remember these victims of persecution and genocide, I hope too that you might draw inspiration from the people of Tuzla, who prevented ethnic hatred from taking root in their city, not by a single decree from their leaders or by some quirk of fate or stroke of luck, but because they knew that every action they took had an impact on the people around them, that what they said, what they thought, and what they did mattered. In the same way that we have each been taking actions every day to stop the spread of coronavirus, when it comes to stopping the spread of the virus of hatred, discrimination, and persecution, every action really does matter.
We remember those of our own members who died in recent days and those who died at this time of the year in years gone by. Albert Michael de Grassa, father of Susan Morris. Morris Max Blind, the brother of Renee Simmons. Sarah Wolfe, mother of Alan. Selwyn Derek Pachter, the husband of Mavis and father of Talia. And we regret to announce the recent death of our colleague, Rabbi Willie Wolfe, who died this week in his 90s, having served almost as many communities in this country, around the world and especially in Germany as well. Zecher tzadikim livracha. May all that was dear and good in their lives endure always as a blessing and as a continual influence for good. As we say together with Jews and all our brothers and sisters around the world. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah.
Be'alma divrach Yerutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. V'agala v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithada v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei dekudesha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran balma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol b'nei Adam. V'imru. Amen. Shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, ve'al kulam. Od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, ve'al kulam. Salam aleinu. Salam, shalom, salam, aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam, salam, salam. Hey-ho, 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 hey-ho.
Peace will surely come to us, to everyone. Salam, peace, for us, for the entire world. Salam, shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you for joining us. Apologies that we cut out, our sound cut out exactly as we were reading the prayer for the victims of the Srebrenica genocide, but we hope that you managed to see the words on the screen and could join in from your homes.
We also think of the community in Bristol as well, who are mourning the loss of their congregant, Rebecca Lizak, young member of their community. And our thoughts are very much with you tonight as well. Our sincere gratitude to Jane Drapkin. She thanked us earlier, saying how proud she was of our community for remembering Srebrenica. And I mentioned that we were so chuffed and proud of her that because of members such as her, because of people caring, we do remember such genocides that happen to other people as well. But also we hope that you have celebrated this Shabbat just as you have been warmed by the thoughts of the community of Tuzla, who stood up, who made acts which mattered. Together, may we have been inspired by them, and inspired also by the music that we have heard tonight and the atmosphere, with our thanks to the Fibers and the Kylies for creating such an incredible atmosphere. for all of our congregation. In a few moments, we switch to our Zoom room for Kiddush, but to everybody, Shabbat Shalom.
And just before we leave for Kiddush, just 2 announcements about Wednesday. We have 2 wonderful programs on Wednesday evening at 6:30, and all of these will be available on our Facebook page and our YouTube page, exactly where you're watching now. So just connect wherever you're watching now, and you'll be able to see those programs as well. At 6:30, we have a special program put together by our member Celia Gould, looking at the challenges that African asylum seekers face in Israel. And she's pulled together really an incredible panel of speakers from a number of NGOs, as well as a refugee who will be speaking and giving first-hand testimony. So that's at 6:30 for an hour. And then following that, we'll be sharing once again, if you haven't yet had a chance to hear about the work we've done on a new strategy for our synagogue, then do please join us at 7:30. And even if you have already joined us for a session on the strategy, do come and join us, as we have Andrew Keane coming to speak to us a little bit about the theory from program to platform, which informed very much our thinking around our strategy. And he's a wonderful speaker. So please do come and join us at 7:30, again, just where you're watching. So we wish you Shabbat Shalom and look forward to seeing you in a moment in our Kiddush Zoom room.